I'm just laughing because he got beat up so bad. He got beat up so bad. Sorry, I'm just laughing. He got beat up so bad. Sorry, I'm just laughing.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, I'm sure that most of you have heard by now that on April 17 in Maryland at the MGM in Oxon Hill, Regis Prograis and Maurice Hooker are going to be locking horns. On this same card, we're going to see Luke Campbell in contention for the vacant WBC title against Javier Fortuna, though the card in its entirety has not yet fully been orchestrated. It's already shaping up to be a pretty decent card just with those two fights alone. Hooker versus Prograis promises to be an all-action firefight between two very strong punchers. However, as soon as this fight became a talking point several weeks ago, I already started leaning towards Regis Prograis. Try and understand that even though Maurice Hooker has very generous dimensions for either a 140 or 147 pound fighter, you know, he's pretty statuesque. He's one of these taller, lankier guys. He's about, 5'10", 5'11"?
Yeah.
Long fighter. But in spite of this, Maurice has never fully used that height of his to his advantage. Maurice Hooker is partial to giving up that height to trade hooks on the inside. Regis Prograis, being the smaller fighter in the fight, this is more or less what he needs.
Plays into his hands.
If you're not going to fight tall against the shorter fighter, you're just making it easier for that shorter fighter to land the kind of punches that he wants to land. And I just so happen to think that Regis Prograis is a concussive puncher on the level of a Maurice Hooker, but he is more defensively sound than Maurice, and I dare say more durable than Maurice, albeit a shorter guy than Maurice. Now, this fight isn't going to be at 140 pounds. This fight is being billed as a welterweight contest. So perhaps Maurice not having to make 140, instead making 147, perhaps will leave him feeling a bit more invigorated,
maybe
a bit more fresh,
maybe,
than having to cut all the way down to 140. Maybe. And maybe that will aid him in the punch resistance department. But that same benefit applies to Regis, you understand it. Now, Regis isn't going to have to make 140 either. Essentially, it's an even playing field, and because it's an even playing field, I still happen to think that Regis is the more durable guy. It's a 12-round war between Regis Prograis and Josh Taylor, a war where both guys landed some really hard punches, really hard shots, and that's a testament to Regis's durability. Just as well, Regis Prograis, in case you forgot, is actually a very talented counterpuncher. A counterpuncher with very heavy hands, and those are the kind of punches that can take you out, the ones that you don't see.
That'll do it.
Maurice Hooker being a guy who doesn't really use his height to his advantage, you know, giving it up to trade hooks on the inside, I see a situation to where, you know, maybe sometime in the mid-rounds or after, he gets hit with something hard by Regis Prograis. Because I reiterate, Maurice doesn't use that height to his advantage. He is not a long-distance jabber. He's not an outside kind of fighter.
He's not.
It's like the same thing that makes Maurice such a fun guy to watch is also the same thing that could end up costing him. It costed him against Jose Ramirez, and I just so happen to think it could cost him against Regis Prograis. So my initial impression of the fight is I like Regis to win it. And for Regis, this will be his first fight since having lost that decision to Josh Taylor in the last leg of the World Boxing Super Series at 140. He's coming off a loss, whereas Mighty Mo, he's coming off a win, a first-round knockout of Uriel Perez. That was a fight that was fought just above the 140-pound limit. So, you know, Mighty Mo, he's on the up and up. He is coming off a win.
That's true.
It's a great fight. It's a great fight because, Regis and Maurice, they could have decided to fight somebody else. They didn't have to fight each other. It's a risky fight. I mean, it's a risky fight for both guys. I mean, you might lean towards one guy more than the other, but the idea is they both can punch. Mighty Mo, he's a strong puncher and a statuesque fighter, so he can pose some resistance to Regis. And they could have so decided to have a couple of tune-up fights, couple of keep busy fights, couple of easy ones, but they decided to go the other way. They decided to take on each other. That's very admirable, regardless of who wins the fight. These guys want to get back in the mix of everything, and they're willing to take on each other to do it, because this fight will get you some attention, depending on how it ends. So, keep your eyes peeled for Prograis versus Hooker on DAZN in late April on the 17th. In other news, I'm sure you guys might have heard about this as well, that the fight between Alexander Usyk and Derek Chisora is a done deal, set to go down on May 23rd at the O2 Arena in London. The fight was supposed to be going down in late March, but it ended up getting pushed back due to some kind of issue that was going on with Usyk's elbow. I vaguely recall reports stating that Usyk isn't injured. He's not injured per se, but what they're trying to do is prevent injury. Thus, they push the fight date back, the fight with Derek Chisora. I think that they're going to get a good turnout for this fight. Obviously, Derek Chisora is a fan favorite over there in the UK, but there is also a desire to see what Usyk is made of now that he's campaigning as a heavyweight, because we know who he has in his crosshairs. We know what fight he's looking for. He's looking for an Anthony Joshua fight. He is Anthony Joshua's WBO mandatory challenger. And so long as Usyk is staying in the winner's bracket, that fight happening isn't a matter of chance so much as a matter of time. Now that Usyk is campaigning as a heavyweight, though, there are lots of questions that need answers. I mean, Chaz Witherspoon really is no litmus test for what this division has to offer, because he's not one of the best and brightest fighters at this weight, you understand? So Usyk beating him doesn't tell us anything, whereas Derek Chisora, all the experience, all the aggressiveness and punching power and punch resistance, all the things he brings to the table for this fight, that is a more accurate barometer for what Usyk is capable of at this weight. Because for all the skill, all the subtleties, and all the nuances that Usyk brings to the table, this is literally the most physical division of all the divisions in the sport of boxing. That cannot be overlooked, and that cannot be said enough.
It's different up there.
Take Tyson Fury's performance against Deontay Wilder this past weekend, for example. Here you have a very skillful fighter, arguably the most skilled heavyweight in the entire world.
You say that.
Just imagine that a guy that can do all the different things that Tyson Fury can do starts to use his size on you, impose his will on you, bear down on you, weighing in at about what? 273 pounds?
No cap at heavyweight.
It's the kind of stuff that Usyk's gonna have to deal with from here on out. And there's nothing stopping the man opposite the ring of him from having a 30 to 40 pound weight advantage. There's no ceiling at heavyweight. And these guys that are already up there, they're used to it. These guys, like Derek Chisora, who fought Tyson Fury, not once, but twice. Admit, he did a lot better in the first fight than he did in the second, but better still, he has those experiences to draw from. That he's been in there with a guy 6'8", 6'9". So, from where a guy like Derek Chisora's sitting, he might be thinking to himself, what the hell am I going to be afraid of this guy for? This guy's a cruiserweight, moving up. I've taken bigger shits than this guy. At least bigger than this guy's punch. Usyk might have enough pop to deter a cruiserweight.
Yeah.
But what about a heavyweight? At cruiserweight, Usyk wasn't all that concussive of a puncher. He wasn't winning fights by strength of arms per se. He was winning them through accuracy and footwork and volume. There are several ways to go about winning a boxing match, but concussive power, strength of arms, at least for Usyk, that wasn't one of them. So at heavyweight, there is that question to be asked. There is that question to be answered. How does Usyk respond to an aggressive mauler like a Derek Chisora, who fights like he's got nothing to lose? Can you shake and bake him the way you shaked and baked Gassiev? Because, this is a naturally bigger guy than Gassiev, and he's got all the experience at this weight that, a guy like Gassiev doesn't, because Gassiev, he's set to be making his heavyweight debut real soon. The idea here is that if you're going to test Usyk's durability, you don't conjure up a chess player.
Nope.
You don't conjure up a guy who's going to try to make it a boxing match. If what you're trying to gauge is Usyk's durability, you need a bruiser. You need a brawler. You need a Derek Chisora. It is for this reason that it takes some insight, some knowledge of the aforementioned fighters. Context is key in appreciating what this fight is and what it is intended to do. It's very easy for the casual observer to look at the number of losses in Derek Chisora's record and assume that he doesn't bring anything to the table, but that would be a gross oversight given these circumstances. That it's not a big win if Usyk beats Derek Chisora. It's not a big win per se, but it is an important one because Usyk still has a lot to prove. This ain't cruiserweight. So I am very much looking forward to this fight in late May. Keep your eyes peeled for that. More heavyweight news. WBC mandatory challenger Dillian Whyte still wants a Deontay Wilder fight, even if there's no belt on the line. And Dillian echoed many of the sentiments we've expressed here on the channel, some that you might agree with, that Deontay Wilder's excuses just go to show how full of shit this guy is. That you're telling me a 40-pound costume is what costed you the fight?
Yeah, right.
You got firefighters running into burning buildings carrying more weight on their backs than you did
on yours.
From the locker room to the ring. So the costume excuse, it just makes no sense. And for Dillian, at least what he's communicating is that between him and Deontay, it's about more than just a belt. It's personal. And he's willing to fight him even if there's no belt on the line. In truth, I'm not holding my breath to see that fight.
Nope.
I'm not.
Nope.
If Deontay Wilder exercises this rematch clause, hypothesize that he wins against Tyson Fury by some chance. Bear in mind, I'm not saying he does or doesn't. I'm just theorizing what would happen thereafter. If Wilder wins his belt back, he's not going to give Dillian Whyte a title shot.
Nope.
By that time, his people might so decide to finally have the Anthony Joshua fight because it's that much more indicative that he's on borrowed time. And you gotta cash out. You can't wait any longer. And that's a situation that could see Deontay Wilder so pinned down for the subsequent 2 fights after what could be a Tyson-Fury rubber match. What do you think? You think the WBC is going to get in the way of that fight, given the kind of sanctioning fees associated with it?
No way.
No fucking way. I mean, they've been gladly allowing Deontay Wilder to stifle Dillian Whyte's title shot so he could fight the likes of Brazil and Ortiz. Add big sanctioning fees to the equation, and I've no doubts that the WBC won't lift a finger to get Dillian Whyte that title shot. I mean, this is in the event that by some chance, I'm not saying it does happen or it doesn't happen, but hypothetically speaking, if Wilder wins his belt back, I don't see him giving Dillian Whyte a title shot, much less if he doesn't win his belt back. If he goes in there, he has a 3rd fight with Tyson Fury, he gets beat the same as or worse than he just did this past weekend, forget about a Dillian Whyte fight. I'd be surprised if the guy don't retire behind 2 crushing back-to-back losses like that. That's basically saying that if Wilder wins his belt back, slim chance of Whyte getting that fight. But if he doesn't get his belt back and he's just a contender, he's not a champion anymore, even slimmer chances of Whyte getting the fight, because then Wilder won't have mandatories. He'll be a contender, just like anybody else. And he's already proven that he will not fight Dillian Whyte willingly. So if Whyte couldn't force a fight with this guy when he was a champion, what are the odds that he's going to be able to force a fight with him when he's a contender, when he's just a challenger like anybody else? That's assuming Deontay Wilder doesn't retire off a loss, doesn't retire after the rubber match with Tyson Fury, because that's a possibility as well. Deontay Wilder is 34 going on 35 years old. 2 back-to-back ass kickings like that is enough to end a guy's career. I mean, where does he go from there, I'm not saying he does or doesn't. I'm not even saying that he should. I'm saying that he might. Deontay Wilder himself, he knows the truth of it. He knows what happened. In spite of what excuses he may be making and what conspiracy theories his fans might be making up as we speak, because these guys are hard at work pandering to their subscribers, trying to convince the boxing community at large that either Tyson Fury cheated or the powers that be didn't want to see Deontay Wilder win.
Bunch of fucking idiots.
But Deontay Wilder himself, he assigned the blame to his costume. You know, that's out of his own mouth. I mean, fuck you guys. Who are you guys? Deontay Wilder himself is blaming the Batsuit, Bayless, and Breland for what happened. He's not saying any of the things that you guys are saying.
He's not.
And what he's saying indicates that he's in denial. I mean, if you go as far as blaming a costume for your loss, it's clear that you can't come to terms with what happened. You cannot process that. It still hasn't registered. You're still in shock.
Traumatized.
And if you're that traumatized to where you can't accept it, atone for it, and move on to rebuild. If this hasn't happened for you yet because you're sitting here blaming a fucking costume, just imagine if you suffer a crushing defeat like that, not once, but twice, because that could happen in a rubber match. There are plenty of people out there saying there's nothing left for Wilder to do and he should stay away from the rubber match. There's plenty of people that feel that way. I myself happen to be one of those people. He suffers 2 back-to-back losses like that. Forget about a Dillian Whyte fight.
Forget about
This
it.
guy might retire. He might. I'm not telling you that because a guy loses 2 back-to-back fights that his career is automatically over and he should retire. That's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that Deontay Wilder, if he loses the 3rd fight, the same as or worse than he lost the 2nd fight, he won't be in the right headspace to rebuild. He won't be in the right headspace because this guy right now is blaming a costume for the loss. He's saying Tyson Fury never had him hurt.
He's in denial.
This is clearly a guy that is in denial, and until the point he comes out of that denial and starts working on what he needs to work on, he's never gonna move forward. The first step to solving a problem is admitting that you have one. Because in admitting that you have one, you have those problem areas to address, correct, and improve upon. That's not what Wilder's doing. Wilder's not acknowledging that the 273-pound man opposite the ring of him manhandled him because Wilder himself doesn't have the boxing acumen to work around this guy's size and what appears to be his punching power. Until Wilder can come to terms with these things, he may not move on. And if he doesn't move on, forget about a Dillian Whyte fight. You know, that's off the table altogether. Wilder wouldn't fight Dillian Whyte willingly when he was on the up and up. So what makes anyone think, including Dillian Whyte, that Deontay would fight him when he's in a downward spiral, when he's in a bad way?
He wouldn't.
At this point, I think we can table any conversations involving Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder. That shit ain't about to happen.